Andrew, the budget. We're going to see the detail just in the next couple of hours. From your members' point of view, many of the small and medium-sized businesses of Australia, what do you get the sense that they would really like to see? There's going to be a budget surplus potentially. It's going to disappear. Times are getting tougher for them. What do you sense they want to see?
Well, look, I do put small business at the top of the agenda. 2.4 million businesses around Australia. At the moment, many of them are doing it very tough. They're facing an environment where energy costs have been going up. They're facing higher interest rates. Debt is costing them more. Many of them, when they get into that situation, they're facing tighter margins. Many of them can't afford to pay themselves a proper wage or their own superannuation. They're having to cut back hours. In those circumstances, obviously, anything that takes the pressure off small business, that builds capacity, that gives them the opportunity to invest, that will be very welcome. Just
one thing, tax deductions to try and electrify their systems that's been leaked already. Is that helpful? Because they've actually got to shell out cash to be able to get back the tax deduction.
Look, I think with a measure like that, from our calculations, at most, it can benefit maybe 30,000 businesses. So 2.4 million small businesses, that's a much bigger issue. So I think those sorts of things are very valuable. But as you say, one of the biggest issues with incentives like that is you've got to be making a profit. You've got to be investing in the first place. It's much more limited. So clearly anything that affects the cost of doing business, that will be very welcome.
Okay, Jennifer Westacott, if I can go to you, the framing of this budget, it's going to be in a surplus. The number is said to be $4 billion, which is wafer thin. I mean, let's be honest, if you have got 3.5% unemployment rate, if you've got commodity prices booming, if you've got $1 at 66 US cents, if you can't produce a surplus, then you're never going to produce a surplus.
Yeah, look, the surplus is great, but it goes to your point. How's it getting produced? It's getting produced by commodity prices. It's getting produced by record low unemployment, more people working, more people paying tax. What I think we have to be cautious of is that we don't build in structural, permanent expenses off the back of temporary increases to revenue. And that's what we'll be looking for. What's the plan for growth? What's the plan to get that GDP number with a 2 or a 3 in front of it? Because without that, how do you sustain higher wages? How do you sustain revenues to government? How do you sustain better living standards? That's the conundrum. Obviously some of the cost of living stuff is really important and it's good and it's needed. But if we don't put our foot on the pedal of growth, how can we sustain that over the long term?
Okay, are some of your members spooked by the changes to the petroleum resource rent tax? Because many of your members, the top 100 companies in Australia, are also very big profit producers. Now, times are going to get tougher. The government's going to come chasing revenue. That's a pretty obvious place to look.
Sure, and look, the government looks like it's taken a middle road on the PRRT, but it's kind of the accumulation of things, Ross. It's the message it sends around investor certainty. At the time when we need the same companies driving the clean energy changes, investing, making huge investments. Now, obviously, they've exempted, from what we understand, new projects, so that's good. But it's all these things added together that make companies nervous about investing. So, it's not just the PRRT, it's the gas price capping, it's the IR changes. And people keep saying, what's next? And we need to turn around that perception that Australia is a riskier place to invest and do things because the Americans, through the Inflation Reduction Act, are eating our lunch. They're taking these big investments away. The Europeans are priming their economy. All those things are what we're competing against. And our companies, global-facing companies, that's what they're up against.